Hey.
Sorry, it was muted. I gave a very excited "What's up, y'all," but you only get one. So
I saw it. It looked very excited, but
back off.
What's going on?
Oh, dude, I'm drinking rum in a fancy glass.
Oh, nice.
Just gave some testimony at the budget committee about how neighborhood associations shouldn't get less money. So, yeah, I feel really good about that. And yeah, I feel like so Sarah, the CM, is asking in her amended FY21 budget that there be $520,000 for COVID-19 recovery. And in my testimony, I said that we should get the same amount of money that we got last year in FY21. We should get 50% of the community and neighborhood matching grants for COVID-19 recovery, and that we should be eligible as neighborhood associations for some of that $500,000, right? Because I think it would be a good pot of money for us to pull upon for sanitary housing. I think that it like fits perfectly, and that, you know, the city, everyone that I've shared kind of the bits and pieces about, I've never shared like the letter that we've been working on just over the phone and stuff. People seem more than 50% into it. You know, they're like, most of what you're saying I agree with. There's parts of it I disagree with, but I think that folks might be down to invest. Like the city may be down to invest money.
They're going to have to do something. I mean, I would rather them get on board than utilize shame, because the other technique I have is we organize a homeless march, because when the folks are leaving the fairgrounds, wouldn't it be pretty good, I guess, photo op to have a huge march all the way down to City Hall from there?
Yeah, I mean, let's hope it doesn't. That will work. Let's hope it doesn't get to that, right? We know that works.
You know what? It's going to fall off just like everything else does. People's attention span, really. It just doesn't seem to last very long, you know, when we go from crisis to crisis.
Yeah.
And what really good about, I guess, you know, recognizing the houseless being the most vulnerable was I really hoped that finally, you know, they would be able to throw some cash on it. So like I said, I don't want it to come down to them getting kicked out and all this other, but
yeah. And you know what? The encampment by my house at 5th and Almaden is getting cleared out on Friday. So the police came by this morning, and, you know, I would feel what I want to do is put sanitary housing there, right? Because I feel like because things are about Hithia, people are more likely to put in action, you know? And I just, I just feel, I don't know what you heard, but I've heard rumors that like by June 5th, the fairgrounds are going to get cleared. And then pretty soon the designated temporary housing sites are going to get cleared too.
Yes.
You're muted, by the way, Thea. I don't know if you're doing that just because you're, I don't know, better than the rest of us, or wearing glasses on your head instead of in front of your face. So.
Old, and I need to see sometimes. I couldn't see that I was muted till I looked at that little red square. But hi, Annika and Chris.
Hello. And hello, Millie. Whoever you are. Hi.
Millie might be my neighbor. Millie, do you live on 5th? Hello. If it's my neighbor, she's
muted also, Millie.
Oh.
I know.
Hi,
I was
Millie, it is you. Hey. What's up?
I am Ian's neighbor.
All right.
Well, I am Millie's neighbor. So, hey, think about that.
Hey, guys.
What's
Howdy.
up? What time is it? 7:54.
So, Millie, did you have
I was listening.
Oh,
I was listening to what you guys were talking about and just kind of running around and doing things. I hate those people who are your neighbors, Ian. And I am very happy. I called this morning because I witnessed 3 guys beating somebody up and kicking him and hitting him. And I didn't call 911. I called the regular cops and the non-emergency number. And I'm not happy with people who argue constantly and who I'm hearing screaming and going hysterical. I'm out in my garden. Alyssa feels the same way.
Yep.
It's not a happy community. It's a raunchy, sleazy, dog eat dog, nasty bunch of nasty, ugly people. There may be one or two very nice people there, but they're not exhibiting anything nice. So I'm all for having housing for people who know how to deal with it, but they're crazy drug addicts and hookers turning tricks, and everybody's stoned out of their minds. I mean, really stoned out of their minds.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you categorically, Millie, but I can tell you that Joshua and Mike, Joshua, the younger guy with black hair slicked back, was always de-escalating fights. And I talked to almost.
There is one guy, yeah.
Yep, and I've talked to almost everyone there. And then Mike, he's an older gentleman. He's helped me clean up more than one time when I was mowing the lawn, that I was moving stuff up.
Witnessed that. But maybe they were kicking him today. Maybe that's who they were beating up.
Yeah, you know what, Millie? Like I said, I can't disagree with you. And you know, I've only lived in the neighborhood for a year and a half. So yep.
People like that, they don't have a vested interest in the neighborhood.
Hey, there's Baby Lemon.
Hello. Hi, David. Can you hear us?
I guess not.
I feel like this is like a Fifth Street reunion. We should just get everyone on the call. I'm Dave's neighbor too.
He was gonna come to my house to do this, and I said, "No, you."
He's running over there right now.
I'll text him.
No, there you go.
So Ian, I don't know if you heard, but the chief can't make it till 7:45 to 8. He has a budget meeting, and then we'll have him for the last part of the meeting.
Cool. Yeah, I just messaged Chris. He shot me a note too. Yeah, and I was just on the budget meeting before this. I provided some testimony as NLC co-chair, and yeah, have some good updates on that for us and what it means for the WCC potentially.
And then Cheryl from the mission will be joining us as well.
Oh, cool.
And I might be joining you with Regan and her person when you guys meet.
Yeah, Peter, I'll include you on that email. I'm a little behind in emails right now, NLC emails, but I'll make sure to CC you. And it's always dangerous when Chris and Annika are this close, because he just put his arm around her, which I've never seen during a WCC meeting. So now that there's no infighting, they're going to be ruthlessly effective, taking us out under the knees.
Absolutely. And the dogs are locked up, so they can't,
The dogs are locked up. Dun, dun, dun.
Yep.
Hey, Chris.
Yep.
Cheers.
It's tea.
I know. We have a date for later, right, Annika?
Yep.
We can watch you sleep.
What's that?
Oh,
We like to watch Annika sleep after the meeting.
yeah.
That's
talk
not
about it.
creepy at all. I'm sure there's a live streaming service for it.
That's
Hey,
right.
Dave, can you hear
Probably
us?
is.
Can you give us a thumbs up if you can hear us? Bam.
All right. Well, welcome. We'll wait a little bit longer. It is only 1 minute till.
Usually we start like 10 minutes later.
Yeah, I was going to say usually 10 minutes later, but
I talked to Travis. He's going to be able to make it.
I haven't seen Eddie at all.
Yeah, you're right across the street from him.
Yeah, I know.
On meetings.
I think he just works at all the times when I'm at work or we just don't cross.
There he is, the one, the only.
Oh, look who's coming.
Hi, Cheryl. Hello, Brad.
And Cheryl's here. Are you going to unmute him?
I let them unmute themselves just because it gets
All right.
confusing. Sometimes I like press it or unmute right as somebody else is unmuting, and then you get into this war of trying to unmute.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, Thea. How are you?
Long time no see. I'm doing well. This is
Yeah.
only my 4th meeting of the day. How are you doing?
Well. I can't touch 4 meetings. This is only my 2nd. So
Wednesdays are always crazy for me.
Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us, Cheryl. I
yeah,
appreciate it.
good to see you. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm doing really well. It's really good to see you.
Fantastic.
Hello, Margaret. Brad, welcome back.
Thanks. Good to be back.
I was just saying, we'll wait a little bit longer. People straggle in. We are planning on having our chief of police here sometime around 7:45 is what Theo was saying, between 7:45 and 8, due to him having a few meetings of the day also. Hi, Stephen. Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome. And Cheryl, do you go by executive director of the mission or?
I do.
Okay.
Sometimes I go by just about anything. They call
Okay,
me.
I just don't want to miss. I was just gonna let Stephen know. Cheryl is the executive director of the mission, and she's here tonight to talk with us.
Great, excellent.
Just in case. And then some other faces are from a different street over by Ian. Millie and David. We should actually have a game to see how many people on our street we could get on a Zoom call between all the members. I think that would be kind of a lighthearted fun.
Board of
It's like
directors.
stuffing a phone booth.
It would be, yeah.
Clowns in the beetle.
Yeah.
Or I should just set up a Zoom outside my house and just whoever wanders by.
Zoom stuffing.
Anyone else click in?
Not yet.
Monica, would you mind sending the link to Travis? I sent him the login code, but he'd really appreciate just a link that he can click to bring him in.
Hey, do any of you Zoom experts know how to, when someone invites you to a meeting, to put it on your calendar so that, put it in Zoom somewhere so you automatically have the passcode there without putting it on your calendar?
You have 2 people waiting.
I always cut and paste. I'm hoping one of you know how to do that. I did learn one pro tip that's been helpful is that when everyone is muted, you can press your space bar and speak and then let up off your space bar. That's much easier than trying to get my little cursor on the little microphone.
Oh, very nice.
Testing, testing.
We can hear you, Stephen.
Yeah, that it works.
Thank you.
Then I wouldn't need my glasses, Ian.
Shit.
All right. So maybe Travis, Susan. We let Susan.
Yeah.
Hi, Katie.
There. Couldn't unmute myself for a minute.
Hello.
I cannot get my video to work this time for some reason.
Well, hi, Susan. We can hear you.
Hi, I'm here, but I can't get the video to work this time. It's weird.
Well, we could just let the stragglers catch up when they come in instead of keeping all of us waiting. Good evening. Welcome to our wonderful Whitaker Community Council meeting. We are under some very interesting times, and I really appreciate everyone being here tonight. It is really awesome that you're spending your energy focused on the things that we love, the Whitaker community, and all those people that are in it, including us. So that being said, before we get into anything, which we will have 2 guests tonight. One is Cheryl, who is the executive director of the mission, who is here with us. And the other is our Chief Skinner, who will be here sometime 7:45, 8-ish. He is involved in another meeting. So I would open this up to the community. Hey, what's up, Travis? We can see you. Does anyone have anything that they would like to say before we get the meeting started? Any announcements, questions, complaints? All right. Chris came. All right, some people straggling in. Well, hello, Chris. We can't see you, but you're on mute. And Susan, you're on mute too. Travis, you are too, just in case you're wondering.
Chris, could you probably get to Ian's thing before the chief jumps on?
Yeah, that's why I was going to change our schedule around. So, Cheryl, do you where is Cheryl? Do you mind? We'll have some announcements with some board info before maybe we have some questions for you, or is that okay with you? Okay, you're muted too.
Whoa.
What is that?
Yeah, that's fine. Someone's shared a screen.
What is that?
Niggas! God! Nigga! 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 Nigga!
Take this person.
Zoom bombing.
We're getting Zoom bombed.
Yeah, so do we want to shut this off?
Yeah, I'm trying.
Who was it? Just for the moment.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Billy, give me your big fat cock in my ass! Papa titty, please, Papa titty, please, Papa titty.
They just keep coming back in. You guys shut the whole thing down. We will put this back up. We'll choose
Hold on.
hold on. Hi. Can everyone hear us?
Yeah.
So that's what our kind of biggest fear was of opening
That-
these meetings
That
up.
was our biggest fear, and
I know who Drew White is.
You want to know something very strange?
yeah. Hi, Drew.
That weird ass music was Serbian accordion music, which I totally recognized instantly, and it was just made a little bit strange. That was very bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, visually, it's like, okay, whatever. The fact that they chose that music, that is so, like, no, who knows about, that's weird.
No.
That's almost like bot trip. I mean, who knows about Serbian accordion music but me in this?
It's very odd. Well,
Chris, in order for this not to happen again, what I'd recommend is that we close the meeting and then send a password and password protect the meeting to all the meeting participants, because it's online right now. Anyone can do that to us again.
They can do it again. Yeah.
Yeah. So in order for this to stop,
oh, that's Kate. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
the last thing that
Actually, can't you disable screen sharing?
yeah.
I mean, but I'd like to share something from my screens later today, and so yeah, I think the only way we can really stop that, because someone could just.
Yeah. Well, Annika would have to let them in, but you're exactly right. We have no idea.
We have 3 people that are waiting, and I mean, at this point.
One is Katie,
I
Catherine's
believe
iPad.
it's Katie. Last time it was.
Anand. And I don't know who Vincent Black is. And Chris is. Yeah, and I don't. Yeah, so okay, that's a great idea, Ian.
We're gonna have to send out another mailer that has.
We lost the lady from the mission. She's gone.
No, she's here. She's right there.
Is she?
Yeah.
When that happens, can't you guys just remove that person right away?
Yeah, what the problem was is I let in too many people, so I didn't know what was real and what wasn't.
Oh, his name was flashing right at the when he first came on.
Yeah, and then there was like one other person, and then they kept it was yeah. And like I said, that is the one thing that we've dreaded.
I'm gonna let this person in unless anybody has any objections. Vincent Black.
Could you disable screen sharing first?
Yeah.
Let me look him up on our Facebook page real quick.
Okay, that's a good idea.
So yeah, considering we will just have to use a different password, I guess, because.
Do you not have the ability to mute somebody or send them to a breakout room that they can't? So like if somebody breaks into the screens, you can just move them off?
I would say yes.
It's not that.
I think it was pretty disturbing. Annika went into freak out mode.
Yeah, everything was happening.
It was.
I'm sorry I missed it.
Oh my God! I can't even describe it. Yeah, it was just. I see Thea's face. Yeah, so.
That image, that image is like not okay in my brain.
No, not at all.
Nor was the language they're using representative of us as an organization in any way.
No.
Or is that language representative of what we espouse as community members in this neighborhood? It was totally unqualifiedly
uncalled for.
Yeah, racist.
I mean, and that's the thing too is, this is a very important use of our time. I was just thanking everyone for their, giving this time, and we really do not have any time for that. We have important business to take care of. So that being said,
there is an Ezra Vincent Black who's a children's programmer at the Unitarian Universalist Church. I don't know if that's who that is.
Okay.
Good luck.
Okay.
We'll let him in, but.
Hi, Vincent. You are muted, just in case you're wondering.
Would you like me to send Vincent a message to see if he lives in the WIT or works in the WIT?
Sure.
Through chat. Okay.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Once again, I am truly sorry that this happened. That was a nightmare. Like Ian's saying, in no way, shape, or form do we condone that type of behavior. I mean, it's other than being sophomoric, juvenile, absolutely repulsive. It is a complete waste of our time, and it's just not funny. I mean, this is not the time or place. But back on track. For everyone that just tuned in, hi Anon, hello. We have Cheryl, who's the executive director of the mission here, and later on we will have Chief Skinner. But what we were going to do is shuffle around a little bit of the agenda. Ian, would you like to go first and maybe start with the letter, or did you want to start with which one? It's up to you.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to go through. So I put together this short presentation, which kind of touches on the beats of the letter that we've put together.
Did you want to wait till the chief was on here for that?
Thea and I talked a bit about it with the chief on Monday.
Hi, Susan.
So we kind of provided orally what we can now show visually. We haven't voted on it as a board yet formally, but yeah, I could save it for when the chief is here. But I thought since some of us have to take off earlier today or earlier this evening, that we might be able to share it now and then continue the same conversation on with the chief when they arrive.
Sounds good.
Annika Vincent is a Whitaker resident.
Okay. Jumped off, but good to know.
Well, we're really sorry, Vincent. We didn't mean to scare you.
Would you mind allowing folks to share their screen, Monica?
Yeah.
Okay.
So can everyone see a slide that says sanitary housing?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Can everyone still see the slide that says sanitary housing?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
So I wanted to talk about an approach that the WCC has been working on for the past several weeks since the pandemic broke out that we're calling sanitary housing. It's a neighborhood association-led approach to providing transitional housing for unsheltered and unhoused neighbors. So I'm going to provide in this presentation just an overview of what this new model of transitional housing is, how we design sanitary housing, what the components of sanitary housing are, our policy asks of the Eugene City Council, our operation asks of the city manager pro tem and the Eugene Police Department, as well as some next steps. So in our proposal, what we're putting forward is a new classification of housing in the city of Eugene that's semi-permanent transitional housing. We're calling it sanitary housing that's consistent with the TAC report in neighborhoods across the city for our unhoused and unsheltered neighbors. What we're proposing is both replicable, scalable, meaning it can be scaled from 2 to 20 residents, and rapidly deployed around the city. We feel that this fits some unmet needs for environmental disasters, such as people displaced from wildfire, flood, or the pending Cascadia earthquake, infrastructure failures such as dams and bridges. I don't know if people saw that recently there was a dam failure and a lot of people had to be rehoused pretty quickly, as well as pandemics, including future outbreaks of COVID-19. And so in order to do this, we're proposing that we start in the Whitaker. But we're proposing that we do this with Conestoga huts, not tents. So we've heard a lot from folks here in the neighborhood that what they want to see is something that transitions people from living on the street to off the street. We know that some people are going to be choosing to live in tents, but we as an organization want to be able to advocate for a new model that brings people off of the street and into permanent supportive housing. So we've modeled this after Eugene's Rest Stop pilot program, the car camping program, and the designated temporary shelter sites. For y'all who don't know, the designated temporary shelter sites is a new housing model that the city of Eugene created in response to COVID-19. So we know that they can create new housing classifications that are in line with code really quickly if the need arises. So how sanitary housing similar to those 3 programs I went to before? Really quickly, it's still 2 to 20 people at a site. It's managed by a nonprofit organization. An on-site manager provides supervision. The sites are fenced, much like the Rest Stop pilot program and the car camping program. There's bathrooms on site. Portable restrooms work really well. Hand washing stations are on site. Trash collection service is also provided, and best practices for water, handling of preparing and food, illness prevention are followed, as well as the zero tolerance policy for violent behavior, alcohol and drug use. And children must be supervised on site and are prohibited from staying overnight, and residents have to follow good neighbor agreements. So we're not reinventing the wheel here. What we're doing is we're taking some of the best practices from these different programs that we're modeling it after, the Rest Stop pilot program, the car camping program, and the designated temporary shelter sites, but we're changing it in ways that we've heard from both neighbors who've been impacted by the community impacts of unhoused and unsheltered neighbors, as well as from the folks who are living on the streets themselves. And so this is how it's really different. So we're proposing that these sites that are sanitary housing be transitional. So they're designed for persons to go into permanent supportive housing within 0 to 24 months, that they be less than 1 mile or about a 10 or 15-minute walk to a shower site, less than a mile or a 10-minute walk to a laundromat, that residents are able to stay on site 24/7 if needed. So we'll talk about kind of what we heard from folks in the community in a minute, but really something that has come up again and again is that people need a place to live, not just a place to stay overnight. And that neighborhood associations, in our case it'd be the Whitaker Community Council, would act as the intermediary, making sure that we have neighbor buy-in and that they approve the project before we move forward with it, as well as someone who's aggregating funding from the city and different community organizations. So why is sanitary housing different? So if y'all are seeing the same screen I do, then you're seeing one of our neighbors. His name's Okra. I first met Okra at Whitaker Tales, which is put on by a local filmmaker. And it's a series that allows the community to talk about neighborhood issues. So this Whitaker Tales was about homelessness. There's a couple of guests, including Cahoots, community supported shelters, as well as some of our unhoused neighbors, including Okra. Okra has been on the streets for more than 30 years. And he feels that you would never ask a Syrian refugee to only stay in a place at night. You would never ask a person whose life has become so hard because of a variety of conditions to only stay in a place during the nighttime and then have to walk around and leave that place during the day. And that really struck me because folks in our community who are unhoused and unsheltered, whether by circumstance, by choice, by a variety of factors, deserve a place to live, particularly those who want to be able to transition to some form of permanent supportive housing, whether that's a co-op, a sober living environment, or an apartment. So why is the WCC or neighborhood associations, why should we act as the intermediaries? Well, the neighborhood petition form is a really good example of that. This is from a Whitaker Community Council project by one of our subcommittees, the Whitaker Community Art Team, for our Free Wall, which is a freestanding mural project. The community knows and trusts us. Even when we knock on strangers' doors, they know who the Whitaker Community Council is, and they trust that we have the best interests of the community in mind. We know our neighbors, we know our neighborhood. We're a 501c3 organization, and we're eligible for funding streams that the city's not, both from private foundations and corporate philanthropy. And we have a history of successful project, program, and grant administration. In addition to that, we also have 40+ years of history in the Whitaker. We've existed for a really long time, and hopefully we'll exist for a long time after this. So the city should know that we represent not only the interests of our community, but also a history of being able to represent the interests of our community. But in order to move sanitary housing forward, we have a set of policy asks of the Eugene City Council that we're putting to them in a letter that Chris referenced earlier, including the creation of a new category of housing called sanitary housing. Sanitary housing has, like I put in those bullets before, a series of things that are similar with other programs, but also there's a couple of things that are very different. And we're asking the city that they allow us placement. And when I say allow placement, I'm saying allow permission, not the authority of the WCC. We would still have to follow kind of the same rules for this form right here, the neighborhood permission form, where we go out to neighborhoods and ask them for permission to put sanitary housing in different parts of the neighborhood. And we're asking that they allow placement in neighborhood parks as well as regional parks. We're also asking the city to allow placement of sanitary housing in public right-of-ways. For Millie and for Dave and myself, at the corner of 5th and Almaden, there's been camps of people in unsanctioned camps for a long time. And I really foresee that in order for us to be able to have those public right-of-ways transition to something else, that we're gonna need to propose a different solution. We're also asking that only neighborhood associations can act as the intermediary organization to secure neighborhood support. What we don't want to do is allow the city authority to be able to put these wherever they want. We really want the Whitaker Community Council to act as the broker to make sure we have supportive neighbors before these are put anywhere. Two other things that we're asking for is about funding. we're asking for neighborhood associations to use over $500,000 that the city manager pro tem put into the FY21 budget. She just submitted an amendment not too long ago asking for the Central Services Department to have an allocation of $520,000 for COVID-19 recovery. And we're also asking the city council to make neighborhood associations eligible for the payroll tax revenues allocated for homeless services. In terms of operations asks, we're asking the city manager pro tem and the Eugene Police Department to have 24/7 enforcement of unsanctioned tent, car, and sidewalk camping at sanitary housing sites. So that would mean that any person who's in an unsanctioned camp, either in their car or in a tent or camped on the sidewalk, that we would be able to reach out to the police and make sure that they could come by and provide enforcement. We're also asking that that neighborhood associations such as the Whitaker Community Council and any housing sanitary site, if a site fails, we should be transparent that we don't know if this is going to work. And if a site goes south, we, with our nonprofit partners who'd be managing the site, we would need the ability to be able to make a site defunct if it needs to happen. So some of our next steps, Thea and I have reached out to Chief Skinner and we've asked them to provide us crime statistics. Something that I've heard anecdotally from talking to city staff and from county staff is that the Rest Stop pilot program, the car camping program, and the designated temporary shelter sites all have data around enforcement, that crime goes down. Both property crime and violent crime goes down once those sites are located in different parts of the city. And if we had information about that, we could put that in the letter that we're submitting to council to be able to showcase to them that it's a worthy investment. We're also asking that Chief Skinner estimate the cost savings for the Eugene Police Department. And then lastly, we're asking organizations such as the Eugene Mission to provide your signature on our letter of support. We're reaching out to Councilmember Cyrette. She's given us a thumbs up to be able to see the letter and consider her letter of support, as well as former Mayor Kitty Piercy. And then City Manager Pro Tem Maderi has allowed us and encouraged us to reach out to staff members such as Chief Skinner to be able to get their support as well. Lastly is kind of just like a rough timeline. In addition to completing the letter, we're working to secure support from the business community, secure neighbor support through the neighborhood petition forums that we've used for other projects, and secure nonprofit service provider support. Chris has already reached out to community supported shelters, and we're in communication with Whitebird Clinic, and we've identified other nonprofit service providers that may be able to support and host sanitary shelter sites. We're committed to being able to secure funding and provide that to partners who want to be able to manage the sites. And there's 2 dates that are here in purple that I wanted to bring up. One is when we would submit the letter as late as June the 15th. And the second date is June the 22nd. So that's when the city council is meeting on budget and deciding on the budget for FY21. We want to make sure that the Whitaker Community Council and other neighborhood associations are eligible for these funding streams, both the payroll tax and the $520,000 that was provisionally set aside by the city manager. We really feel that those funding streams can be used to bring more and more sanitary housing on board. And we really need something different. Anyone who's lived in the Whitaker for a long time, I have not, I've only been here for the past 18 months, knows that even if we do pay for cleanup, it's not going to solve the problem. We need to be able to create more housing inventory to get people off of the streets and into permanent supportive housing. And we also need enforcement to mitigate some of the community impacts that we've all felt, whether it's drug abuse, violence, or some of the needles and some of the trash on the ground. I kind of wanted to end it here. I've been going on and on for about 13 minutes now. But I just wanted to say that this has really been a labor of love for a lot of years between a ton of community members as well as Whitaker Community Council members. And so although we haven't voted yet on a shared set of definitions for sanitary shelter, I'm hoping tonight we can have a deeper conversation around potential partnerships with the Eugene mission, as well as input from community members on how they feel about the model that we're bringing forward, or maybe things we can add to our definitions in order to make the model more effective.
That's great. I had a question. Are through the neighborhood leaders association, are other neighborhoods being proposed to accept this as well?
So I'm the co-chair of the Neighborhood Leaders Council, and what I've been doing is talking with different neighborhoods piecemeal, as well as Chief Skinner and other city management personnel to be able to see what kind of where their buy-in is. Bye, Drew. Thanks so much for joining us. Great to see you tonight, man. And so while other neighborhood associations aren't yet proposed to accept this model, what I'd like to do is have the Whitaker be a use case. Have the city invest money in us first, so that we could potentially act as a model for other neighborhood associations to be able to replicate both what we have in terms of the operations, but also have the policy be scalable and replicable, so we have an eye towards the rest of the city, but really focusing on the Whitaker first.
Yeah. Good.
I do think it should, I'm sorry, Cheryl. I do think it should be something that all of the neighborhoods should adopt also, or at least in some small way. It would definitely share the burden that we're all going to have soon. Sure.
Yeah, I have lots of really good stuff there, Ian. I don't know, I have lots of questions, but I really like the format. I like so many of the ideas there. My questions, when I'm thinking about the way City of Eugene coordinates with Lane County, I'm wondering to what extent you've involved Steve Manila and the administrators, the folks that are administering the continuum of care dollars in this discussion. Because many times Sarah will just defer to Lane County, et cetera. I don't think it's just an issue of the City of Eugene budget. So in thinking about dollars or even community partners to run that. So have you explored that at all?
Yes. So we've primarily liaised with the city's EOC as well as Sarah as a way to be able to get city buy-in first from city policymakers, and of course, Chief Skinner, because we wanted to make sure that there was strong city support because of the way that we as a neighborhood organization receive funding from the city and these new funding pots from the city to be able to provision homeless services and housing. But at the same time, in parallel, we've been working, me through the NLC as well as my co-chair, David Monk, have been working with staff members from Lane County Health and Human Services and from different parts of Lane County's incident command system and their emergency operations center, because it's a little bit different than the same.
Right, and I'm just seeing generally that the wheels are turned by Lane County and the incident command there. So I'm just wanting to make sure that they're included in that. Chief Skinner's here, so.
Yep. So they've been included, but our conversations are not nearly as advanced as they are at the city, with me working with policymakers as well as the folks in management, kind of the C-level management.
Great. And I was also curious, I'm liking very much where there is, here's a place that we are supporting folks to locate at and encouraging folks to use that place as a sanctioned place. I'm wondering what the discussions have been about enforcement. My sense is that because of the Boise case, and Chief Skinner can address this as well, that there's a sense that there cannot be any enforcement when folks choose not to locate in those designated places.
So this is a perfect time for me to punt to Chief Skinner to weigh in on this. Chief, what Cheryl and I were just discussing is the same presentation that Thea and I gave to you on Monday. We were talking about sanitary housing and the model that we're proposing to council through the WCC. And if the Boise case, and for those of you who haven't seen it, it was a case out of Idaho that went to the state Supreme Court around enforcement of persons who were unsheltered and unhoused. And the unconstitutionality of the police enforcing those who are living on the streets. It was ruled cruel and unusual punishment. So, Chief, I don't know if you could weigh in a little bit on if the enforcement piece that we're asking from City Manager Pro Tem Maderi and you would be unconstitutional under the Boise ruling, given that that's one of the pieces that we're asking for in exchange for increasing the housing stock through sanitary housing.
Yeah, excuse me, I'm happy to provide some thoughts. I'm not going to share my video just because I've got a couple of different things going on and I'm at home. So I can't trust that I'm not going to have a 10-year-old running behind me in a towel after she got out of the shower. So we'll just keep it at that. The Boise ruling is certainly something that has impacted the way we do our work, but the circumstances around Boise were significantly different than the circumstances we have here. The main differentiation is that in Boise, the enforcement of camping was a crime. And so in the city of Eugene, the enforcement of prohibitive camping is not a crime. It's a simple violation. It's not an arrestable offense in the sense of a custody arrest. It's like getting a traffic citation and being summoned to court for that. So in many instances, while the Boise ruling is often used as an example of why we can't do something, in fact, it's not a complete apples to oranges conversation, but it's not the same. And so our legal counsel is advising us that while Boise is certainly a consideration, it's not a reason that we should stop enforcing prohibited camping in the city. Now, having said that, there's a separate set of rules that are considered criminal, and that is an overarching violation of park rules or prohibited park rules. And that's a variety of things, not just camping, but a variety of things that are prohibitions in our parks. And if you are purposefully and intentionally breaking the rules in our parks, that is a low-level crime, and you can be arrested for that. We have a tendency to cite and release for that instead of clogging up our jail system with those arrests if we end up enforcing that. But that's a separate subset of kind of the prohibited camping. So as we look at what we're going to have to do at some point, which is kind of get our arms around the amount of camping and car camping that we have allowed to occur while we flatten the curve, we are hoping to address the decrease in shelter space that we have, whether it's Cheryl's shop or Dusk to Dawn. All of those are not operating at full capacity. We're looking at some other alternatives to be able to house people, but at some point we are going to be enforcing the prohibited camping ordinances in the city of Eugene.
Anon, did you have something that you want to say? Hold on, you're muted. I got you.
Oh, thank you. I think I might have misheard what Cheryl said, so I'm asking for clarification, and from you too, Ian. What I thought I heard being said was there was a question of whether or not people could be forced into this housing, and I didn't realize that if that was really part of the whole plan, was making people go into this whether they chose to or not.
No, and I'm sorry if I'm speaking for you, Ian. No, that wasn't it at all. No.
Okay.
He was explaining something about a court ruling.
Right.
And I think you just came in at the tail end, so I'm sorry.
No, I'm curious as to what Cheryl was saying before Ian responded.
Yeah.
Cheryl,
So what I was asking about, I don't know what is anticipated with respect to enforcement when we're talking about encouraging folks to make use of. I think obviously when these locations are well run, they will fill up immediately. So then the question is, I think for communities is, what will happen with the unauthorized locations, and how will community groups want to deal with those? And I was wondering whether that would fall under the rubric of enforcement, and whether or not that was something, an expectation that could not be fulfilled because of Boise.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl.
Yeah, and just to be clear, with this proposal that we are undertaking, it's not as if we do not want new neighbors who happen to be homeless. We just want sanitary housing for those people that are good neighbors and would be a great fit in this community and in a perfect spot. But like maybe Cheryl was saying too, is just to be honest, we don't want to slide back to where we were before. We don't want to have tents popping up everywhere. We don't want to come into, you know, these unintended consequences by providing these services, whereas we're not providing services to create new community members. Stephen, I'm sorry, go ahead. I got you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was assuming that the name sanitary housing would have led to a bullet point mentioning screening for people accepted into this location. Is screening, medical screening, part of the proposal? I didn't see it on a bullet point.
Yeah.
So Stephen, just in the same way that the city's contracted with community supported shelters and Nightingale shelters for some of the rest stops, the Whitaker Community Council would then in turn contract with other nonprofit service providers to help us run the sites. So implicit but not explicit in the bullet points is kind of a set of criteria which would ensure the ongoing health. And I think Brad is the one who came up with the name sanitary shelters. And it was really in a response to COVID-19 and realizing that for a long time we haven't had, I mean, the TAC report explicitly states this, enough transitional housing to get people off of the streets and into some form of permanent supportive housing. But yeah, that's really good feedback to kind of more explicitly state in the PowerPoint moving forward of the necessity of stating the role that screening would play, health screening on a lot of different ways, whether it's for COVID-19 or STIs, to be able to provide health services. And Cheryl, I wanted to go back to your question about enforcement because at least for me, of course, I haven't had that question like completely answered in my mind about if the persons who are entering this program and there's other unhoused folks who are unsheltered living nearby, if that would be enforceable if the community is asking them to move. And so I just wanted to check in with you and then check back with you, Chief Skinner, under the current ruling. Oh, Chief Skinner's left. Under the current ruling, I just wanted to check with you, Cheryl, to see if your question was answered, because if not, Thea and I have a follow-up meeting with Chief Skinner tomorrow, and I'd love to engage with you further in a conversation about how we can perhaps work together for some of the Eugene Missions property, if you're interested in a conversation about working together on this model. But certainly right now we're in a stage of doing our diligence and working with the city first and then the county to make sure that we can provide the services, but also provide the enforcement too. So those persons who are transitioning into sanitary housing would be able to have the lifestyle that they want so they can transition to permanent supportive housing. But I just wanted to check with you to make sure that your question regarding enforcement was answered to your liking.
Well, I just think there are a lot of moving pieces there. And like I said, I'm very supportive. I think it's fantastic that the group wants to do and provide housing of this type. We love what Community Supportive Shelters is doing. That's why we're hosting the Conestoga Huts for Veterans Homes here on the Mission property already. But I want to make sure that there's an awareness of some things that happen when sites of this type are created. There are often expectations of transitional housing that folks will come in and in 2 years, 90 days, whatever the time frame is, will move on. But without supportive services, that may not be a realistic expectation. So the system can basically clog up. So that's one issue to be sure to address. Another thing that happens, regrettably, is that many times these sites will be a magnet for individuals on the periphery, and that can cause also unintended consequences. And I love the approach of keeping the place open, you know, throughout the days to reduce the loitering and those types of issues. But that's why I just wanted to flag that if the goal is to have folks who are in sanitary, well-run, structured environments, you might have spillover situations. And I think that people need to speak very candidly about that. And that's why even with a lot of the planning that's going on right now, there's the approach of let's do referral type approaches to get into transitional housing, and getting away from drop-in models, which also lead to the loitering and the accumulation of individuals. So I think all of those types of issues at least have to be addressed head on before something like this is just put into place, or you might get unintended consequences of creating a community that you did not want to have.
Yeah. And Thea, did you have something to say?
Oops.
Gotcha. Hold on. There you go.
No, you just
Oh,
you
she
put
hit it too.
I'm not touching.
You see?
Sorry.
Sorry. No, we also have those questions that we sent to him, so that will tie in with this, that I pulled from the website. That for Chief Skinner.
Yep. Can we share them with everyone? If you don't mind. But yeah, Cheryl, along with that too, we do, just like you, we understand the unintended consequences. You know, possibly with this type of shelter, it may require a partnership with some form of private security. I mean, this is something that, you know, we haven't fully explored on how we're going to run it or who's going to run it. But like Ian was saying, and, you know, we want to use models that are already working, you know, and we want to vet the people that are going to be there. And we want them to succeed. So, you know, same as we're providing a way for them to shower, we'd like to provide them a way to go to the doctor, you know, or at least to obtain their medication, or all of the simple things that may fall out by, you know, not having shelter. So yeah, we want to set people up for success. You know, we can't save everyone, and that's the challenge, but we can start, and we can save a few people from living unsheltered, you know. And I think that once we build upon a few people, hopefully it's going to catch on. And like, you know, talking to Ian about this, you know, making it available in other neighborhoods too, but in a way where it's not confrontational, where it's compassionate, you know, because I think that's where we're at right now. Is the sanitary housing is drawn from, we don't want people to have to live in tents. You know, we don't want them to have to be stacked underneath bridges. It's just, it's unconscionable to think of human beings being allowed to shelter like that. So I don't know. Like I said, we can't save everyone, but I think this is a really good step in the right direction. And hopefully, you know, with Chief Skinner, you know, being able to maybe guide us on how to prevent these unintended consequences, you know, the no nonsense policies, the no alcohol policies. I think all of these things may be a little draconian, but they're going to work, you know, and you have to start somewhere, and you have to be bold. I think that's what's part of this too. Thea, did you want to go ahead?
Did you get the questions that I sent to Holly for you?
Yeah, Thea, I've got them. I'm gonna, if I can stay unmuted, and then I'm gonna just toggle over to my email because I've got them right here, and I can read them out loud if that's helpful for those that haven't seen.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
What is good. So if now's a good time for me to go through these, I will.
Please.
So one comment just to finish kind of the thought of where I jumped in on this conversation is a couple things. The timing's actually, well, the timing's not perfect, but the timing is actually pretty good in the sense that The city right now is trying to find locations to house those folks that have been in designated temporary shelter sites for a number of weeks that were overseen by either Carry It Forward or CSS. I'm not sure who was doing that, but when you think about having kind of these quote unquote vetted tenants that really are trying to do the best to put themselves in a situation that is, you know, looking for a hand up instead of a handout. They're trying to better themselves. They really do want to get into the pipeline for some permanent supportive housing. There's an inventory of about 32 individuals that we have tremendous energy around trying to house somewhere so they can continue the hard work that they've already started. And so there may be an opportunity in the Whitaker area to be able to host some of those and help with that, with the housing of those 32 individuals. And they already come kind of pre-vetted, if you will, and already well on their way. And they're people that actually want the help, which I think is a critical delineation between those folks that are unhoused, between the ones that are really looking to do something different and healthier, and those that would say no thank you the minute they find out there's any kind of structure or accountability to their housing situation. And there's plenty of those out there. And so you'll always be left with that population of unsheltered, mostly adults that will say no thank you regardless of the situation if there's accountability attached. So just some thoughts on that. The first question that I have here is it's one that I get everywhere I go. So this is not unique, is how can we get improved police response time in our neighborhoods? And we've talked about this on multiple occasions. You know, as a community, we all compete for a fairly scarce resource, whether it's in Whitaker or in South Eugene, or it doesn't matter where it is, out in Bethel, West Eugene, up in Gillum, or north of Ferry Street Bridge. You know, all those calls for service that come in get prioritized, and we respond to the highest priority calls over the lower priority calls in every part of the city of Eugene. And so when we think about how we get improved police response time in our neighborhoods, it really is about supply and demand, as we just need to create more supply to respond to keep up with the demand of response that we have. And so we're working on that, and we're hopeful that with the community safety initiative, we're going to be able to build some greater capacity so that you see improved police response time in your neighborhood, regardless of the priority. Now, having said that, I would suggest that if it's a priority 1 or 2 call, which is a life or property safety call, especially crime in progress with suspects that are identified or that are actively engaged in criminal behavior, our response time is actually is very good when it comes to that. We drop what we're doing and we go. I think the majority of the pain that you may feel and that others feel is in those livability calls, those crimes against society, if you will, that happen to fall to the lower priority, that compete with all the other calls of similar nature that we have throughout the city. And so that's a tough one to answer in the sense of immediately how we improve that, because the way we improve that is through looking at internal efficiencies that we can have. How do we free officers time up as much as we can to create a greater sense of availability for them? And how do we add capacity to the system to include number of officers that are handling the calls for service? We average at about 400 to 450 calls for service a day. And so when you think about breaking that down by hour, that's an awful lot of calls for service that we don't get to based on what we're doing. And we're seeing more and more that some of the higher level calls for service and higher priority calls for service are requiring multiple car response and taking sometimes hours to resolve. So I have multiple resources tied up on major calls in the city of Eugene, and so that certainly contributes to the challenge of responding to those lower level calls for service. The second question was, how can the Whitaker Community Council, the mission, and EPD work together to keep our neighborhoods safe while helping our unhoused and free and free of tent camping and car camping. We don't want to, in parentheses, we don't want to backslide. Can we do designated areas, park hosts with Conestogas? I think this is probably a question that you figured out an answer to even before I got on the call when you were talking about the path you're trying to go down with sanitary shelters is how do we create an environment where we move away from the tent camping, the lean-tos, the tarps, the pallets, everything that we're seeing out there being used as shelter, and how do we move to something that's a little more standardized, a little bit more sanitary, certainly more safe, and has some structure around the way people live and camp and interact with each other, and being mindful of the size of these groups that we put together and what's manageable and what becomes unmanageable. And in a few cases, we see some really successful models of how even some levels of self-governance occurs when people feel a sense of ownership and belonging to a community, and being able to do that. We have a couple of great examples of some onesie-twosie Conestogas that are placed on business properties, and those folks actually act as kind of a quasi-security force and take so much pride in where they're living that they, on behalf of the business that's sponsoring them, they actually look out for the business and deter criminal behavior. And so that's a nuance that I think we continue to want to tap into, looking for those businesses that are willing to host one or two Conestogas with the intent of them being kind of a 24/7, if you will, eyes and ears of that property as they live in those Conestogas. We certainly don't want anybody to backslide. It feels like we've backslid, quite a bit through COVID. If you ever wanted to know what it would look like to lift the camping prohibition as suggested by certain advocate groups to quote unquote decriminalize homelessness, and what they're talking about is they want to decriminalize camping, which camping isn't a criminal offense, so that's a little bit of a misnomer, and decriminalize trespass and allow people to do whatever they want to do. If there was ever a time you wanted to know what that would look like, then just look around right now, because that's what it looks like when we allow people to shelter wherever they can find a place to shelter in an attempt to flatten the curve. And I would suggest to all of us on the call that the CDC guidelines are simply guidelines intended to flatten the curve. And it feels like, and based on my time in the Emergency Operations Center and being close to the information, we have successfully done that in Lane County. When you have total cases in the low 60s with only 2 deaths, and to my knowledge, none of our unhoused or unsheltered individuals tested positive for COVID, it feels like we have successfully flattened the curve for the time being. We have to be diligent about that because we don't know what wave 2 or wave 3 looks like. But we certainly don't want to backslide. And so it leads to kind of the third question, which is specifically how will EPD move forward in camping in the parks and right-of-ways? And you give me some great examples here. And I will tell you, I'm having my first conversation, well, I've had multiple conversations, but my first formal conversation with Lane County Incident Command about what are the priorities we want to set to start to unwind what we've allowed to occur over the last several weeks around camping. And our first commitment is going to be in the parks, to take our parks back and to get our parks back to where they were. Now, some people would suggest that we should open our parks up for legal camping, and that is the logical place to go. And I would suggest back to those folks that the families and the neighborhoods that sponsor those parks would not agree with that notion. It's not uncommon for some of these camping sites to have to be addressed for sanitation issues, drug use, and criminal behavior. And so our commitment is going to be, I think you'll see a priority placed on the parks. I think you'll see a second wave of priority placed on our waterways and our riverbanks. Underneath the Ferry Street Bridge is a mess right now. We need to do something about that. And then we'll think about what we need to do concurrently, think about what we need to do about the car camping situation and the inventory of not abandoned, but dysfunctional and broken down motorhomes and trailers that are just sitting around on our streets housing people. And so it's going to be a heavy lift to even get back to where we started pre-COVID.
Cheryl,
And I'm really,
I'm
when
sorry,
we talk
did you have something, Cheryl?
Yeah, Chief Skinner, if you don't mind, I wanted to chime in on this too, because I thought that the mission actually is a little bit of a test case on what happened during COVID-19 and how to perhaps take some of these lessons into the future and how not to backslide. It was, if you don't mind me borrowing some of your time here.
No, please.
It was very eye-opening for us. You know, we are always learning and trying to get better. And it was amazing to us that when we became shelter in place and stopped our drop-in services, how immediately the streets around us all cleared out. And I don't know if you all had noticed that, but it was dramatic. And it was also dramatic from a safety perspective, the number of incidences that my staff were dealing with. I mean, pretty, you know, the number of physical threats, the number of the tremendous amount of property damage stopped almost immediately. And when we were doing it solely for health reasons, but asking our guests to observe the same restrictions on mobility that the broader community was observing, only to leave the Eugene Mission campus for essential trips. And we saw a dramatic change in our guests. Our guests became much more engaged, much more participatory, much more relationship oriented. And it really seemed like that had been stymied by some of the more negative elements of drop-in type activities that we were doing with folks that, as I think you characterized, Chief Skinner, folks that are saying no thank you to structure or to any type of accountability. And I think this is a painful message for some to hear in the community. But we do see, we've seen on First Street, and I certainly saw it on Second Street, where things cleared out when there was, when those services went away. So where did those folks go? And what happens when on June 5th, those temporary services shut down? So I don't even think we've seen the challenges to the community when those temporary services shut down. But we are committed to, from a not backsliding perspective, we are committed to staying open throughout the day so that our guests are not having those types of interactions that have been less than positive. We are committed to continuing to engage folks and encourage them into structured environments. But we're also committed to not resourcing what we believe is things that are de-incentivizing forward momentum. And we've asked our guests not to hand out Eugene resources to folks that are within the Whitaker neighborhood, because we think that is contributing to the attraction of some more negative elements. And again, these are not positive, popular things to say publicly, because we care deeply for the unhoused community. But how do we encourage folks to start taking steps forward to seek structure and to seek healthier, more sanitary environments? Because I can tell you that our mobile outreach have been repeatedly told that they had no interest, not only not coming to the Eugene Mission, but not coming to some of the other sheltering environments, even in, you know, March, in when we thought that COVID-19 would just be sweeping through the unhoused community. So that's my bit of my rant there, but I think we need to be very mindful of folks that are very reluctant to seek out the type of structure that we are all looking to provide, and having a very realistic approach to that.
You know, Cheryl, you thanks for saying that. You know, this goes to the age-old question that you hear, and I'm sure you get the question as much as I do when I'm out and about, is if we build it, will they come? It's that whole, are they here because of the services, or are the services here because of the unhoused? And one of the things that we saw to support your your theory is when the dining room closed down, we saw a very strong decline in our bad behavior in the downtown core. And when we had convenience stores kind of close down and limit the number of people that could be in there in the downtown core, we saw a marked improvement in bad behavior when people weren't just hanging out and around the services just to utilize the services. And so I think it speaks to kind of what we saw on First and Second Street. And I've noticed, because I'm on the corner of Second and Chambers a lot because of the EOC, which is right across the street from the Mission, right across from Chambers. I've noticed that corner is a night and day difference since we've limited the number of people in the Mission and have been strict about who we're serving in the Mission. They've moved on to somewhere else, and that somewhere else is, if it's for shelter, that somewhere else has been in a variety of spots throughout our entire city that we're going to have to unwind. But I do think it's an interesting experiment in wondering what types of services and the pervasive nature and of our services, how much that is hurting or helping what we're trying to accomplish. And like you said, it's not a popular conversation to have at all. And in many circles would be seen as being very, very unfavorable. But I do think I agree with you. I saw a steep decline in bad behavior when the dining room closed down in the downtown area. And as those things ramp back up, I think we're going to see that increase. And we've got more people camping and car camping in Eugene than, and I've only been here 2 years, but I've got people that have been here 20 years, and they say it's as bad as they've ever seen it in the 20 years they've been here. So it's something.
Yeah, it is. Ian, did you have something?
Yeah, Chris, I know that you have the rest of the agenda to go through, and Thea and I have a meeting with Chief Skinner tomorrow to continue our conversation about sanitary housing and how we can work together with EPD to move that model forward and propose it to council formally through the WCC. But I wanted to check in with you, Cheryl. Would you be willing, over the course of the next maybe 2 weeks, to have a follow-up meeting with members of the WCC working on this model to help us, at the very least, learn some of the lessons, both during COVID and previously with the folks who are hosting in Conestoga Huts, to help us inform maybe some of the contours of our proposal, some of the operation concerns that you've shared with us tonight, or ways that we may be able to work together in partnership moving forward as we advocate for this to council and the city management?
I would be delighted to work with you. I don't know if I can make any commitments at this point, but I can tell you I'm very encouraged by this nature of work, because I think Conestoga type, small structured environments to support the folks that are trying to make those steps are absolutely critical for this community. So I would be thrilled to be part of that discussion.
Chief Skinner?
Yes.
How about the thought of, because we don't want to camping in the parks because it's illegal at this point. What about a park host, kind of like you would have in a campground with one Conestoga in a parking lot? Would that work, or would that, if we got city council to designate that as a okay thing? Or do you think it would create more issues?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I think that this council has shown a strong propensity to protect our parks and open space for a variety of recreational activities that we would want. I think it's a tough lift to get our parks opened up for any kind of camping, whether it's structured or not. Like I said, I hate to speak on behalf of council because that's really a policy decision. But based on what I've seen and the dialogue that I'm having, and I gotta tell you, I have a chance to see every email that's sent to mayor and council. I'm on that thread. The hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails from community members that are just begging for relief from camping that they're seeing in the parks right now has probably put us in a situation where we're not going to see us going down the path of anything experimental in the short term. I think most of what we'll focus on is, okay, let's get our parks back to where they were pre-COVID, and then potentially let's have this conversation. And so that's why there's a need for things like what's going on in the WCC to kind of take on, almost from a neighborhood association perspective, finding a spot or two that's going to host 2 or 3 of these Conestogas to create some relief for some of the inventory of unsheltered people that we have. And it's like I said, it's a perfect timing because we have the designated temporary shelter sites that are going to be shutting down in the next few weeks. And we certainly want to do something for those folks as opposed to kicking them loose. The other thing that really concerns me that I'll put on your radar screen as a council is the fact I know the Lane County Fairgrounds is a little bit further away. It's in kind of Jefferson West Side. But when the fairgrounds closes their doors, that's 120 individuals that are going to walk out the door and are going to be looking for a place to land. And we don't have a plan for that, quite honestly. We don't have spots for those folks. We lost 200 total beds in shelter as it is between, I don't know if that includes your inventory as well, Cheryl, but I know that between dusk and dawn and dawn and on, everything we're doing, and rest stops, we're down 200 beds of inventory. So there's no place for those folks to go. And so I'm really, really concerned about where those folks land as we start to try and recover from the COVID-19 kind of shelter in place, if you will, type of mandate.
Anand, did you have something that you wanted to throw in?
Yeah, I do. I just want people to keep in mind something that one of Chief Skinner's people had said at one of our meetings when talking about difficulties within the unhoused community, which was 10% of the people cause 90% of the problems. And I think, Cheryl, your experiences with people coming in from outside and causing issues with some of your clients there is another aspect of that. My concern is that we're so interested in making sure that everything's structured that it may be not really as inviting to people who aren't the problem. Sure, there is a certain percentage of the unhoused population who have drug problems, who have mental health problems. But if you look at the point in time counts, about 25% of them have substance issues and about a third of them have mental health issues, although actually the substance issues kind of lumps into that. Most of them don't. Most of them just don't have housing because they can't afford it. And that's primarily what's needed. Primarily what's needed is not necessarily some restrictions. Primarily what's needed is housing. I just hope people can keep that in mind.
I can definitely keep that in mind, Anand. The one thing that I wanted to say along with that and with what Chief Skinner was saying is we can't put these people out on the streets. Like like as a society, conscionably right now, we owe it, at least not to them, but to ourselves to find a way for these people to be housed. I mean, I just can't, we can't let them down. I mean, this has got to be something that we work on because we know it's coming. Like the chief is saying, we know it's coming. We don't want to shame the city into providing housing. We want to work with the city. We want to work with anybody under the sun that will get these people housing. But that's something else. And go ahead, Cheryl. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say that we also have to recognize the new reality of post-COVID-19 that I've been hearing now for months, and I agree, the great dangers to a very health impaired, with immune systems that are impaired. We have a population that is 30% of our population is over 60, and many of them have very serious health conditions. So we're basically basically almost a nursing home with a significant portion of our population. So what does this mean going forward? This means that we are not probably going to have the capacity, because we've been operating both the Eugene Mission and St. Vincent de Paul under a very dense model of housing folks. Yep. So to everything that I'm reading saying that that is not the best way, that we need to maintain a de-densified environment. So these types of things that you all are suggesting are needed just to provide a modicum of filling in that, yep, that huge gap, because yep, we've gone down we've gone from 400 a night down to about 250, and sometimes it goes up to 300 depending upon how you count it. But I don't see those numbers getting up to 400 because we have to keep people de-densified.
Yep.
Yeah, and so that lack of inventory just aggravates an already difficult situation. And as much as I think we all share a heart for wanting to do something meaningful for here, I oftentimes tell people that we need to be realistic about what it is we're facing, what it is we're trying to solve. There's two things. We're never going to be able to create, in the short term, certainly, we're never going to be able to create enough inventory to meet everybody's needs. There's just, we've been working on this for decades and have not figured this out. And and even if we did, like I said earlier, there's going to be a significant population that is just not going to want to avail themselves of the services and or the structure. And so we as a community have to continue to have a conversation about what is going to be our tolerance for bad behavior with people that have chosen not to do something more constructive with their living situation. And to your point, that doesn't matter which community I'm in from a policing perspective. In every community I've been in, 10% of the people, like you said, are attributed to 90% of our crime. I mean, it's the same thing. We have so many unsheltered people that are just trying to survive and just trying to, do what they can to wake up the next morning. And they're painted with a broad brush from those individuals that are also surviving, but they're surviving by victimizing their neighbors and each other.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. Is that the first people who get victimized are in fact the unhoused people themselves. Mm-hmm, generally speaking, if you've got people who are unhoused who are actually a problem, the first people they victimize are other unhoused people. And I'm just wondering if there isn't some way to better identify those who actually are the problem so that the rest aren't penalized for it.
Yeah, and there are some ways we can do that. I mean, it doesn't, and mostly that's through community engagement. I mean, our community can tell us who the problems are. I mean, I get complaints every single day that range from, hey, I don't like having a tent close to me, but outside of that, I don't have any issues with what's happening, all the way to runs the other gamut, which is needles everywhere and bike chop shops and drug
Sure.
use and prostitution and all of that stuff. So, through good and community engagement, because the community is the eyes and the ears of this police department, they tell the story about what's going on in this community. They're the ones that help us identify where we should be focusing our attention. And that's why I'm such a staunch advocate for people to call, even if we can't get to your response right away. If you call, it's a statistic that we can count on, that when we're doing the analytics around where the problem areas are and what we need to do, we actually have those metrics so that we can point to that. But yeah, we can certainly do that. The problem is, and that what we've seen through COVID, and this is just my soapbox a little bit, is that when we do identify those problem groups and we do something about it, the backlash we receive as an organization from either moving these people around or being unfair to these people is astronomical, when in fact what we're doing is we're breaking up, in some cases we're breaking up criminal rings of behavior and or drug use and doing that. And And the other piece of this is as much work as we could do, we've got a broken system that can't handle the number of people that we sometimes need to put into the system. You know, we have all sorts of restorative justice options that we like to try and explore, whether it's community court or veterans court, mental health court, drug court, all of these things. But every once in a while, there are some behaviors that just need good old-fashioned space for somebody to go to jail. And it's not very often that I would say that, but we're seeing more and more behavior that is being condoned and being overlooked as a result of a system that can't handle the capacity.
Yeah, and I think this couples with the conversation we were having with Cheryl earlier is, you know, when we're providing these type of resources, we are going to need some help, because we can't backslide. We can't go at all. Just to let everyone know, we have about 10 more minutes. We'll talk with the chief. Unless there's another question. Was there more questions on our list, Thea?
There's one more question.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to do with camping.
No, it doesn't. It had to do with shutting down streets so that
oh yeah,
so that restaurants could put tables out. So I don't
Ooh,
I don't know I don't know the answer of actually closing down streets, but I will tell you that I was on a call today that was specifically speaking to what we either need to do in a code, or what provisions are already within code that loosens up the ability to put tables out on the public right of way, like the sidewalks and adjacent parking spots, to give people more outdoor seating. And so I do know that is a significant desire of our business community. And I know for a fact that our city manager pro tem, Sarah Maderi, is telling staff to make that happen. So I don't know if you'll see a street shut down, but I think in the early stages, you'll see us free up public right of way to be able to put tables and chairs.
So do you know who we could talk to? Because our sidewalks are too small in our neighborhood.
We could do a block party permit, you know?
Yeah, and I think maybe the on-street parking is in play. So it still allows for some cars to pass, but there's some on-street parking. Now the question becomes, you know, for me, is around safety. But I would say that the people that are engaged in this discussion is Denny in public development. Denny Bro in public development is really working on this with a lot of the restaurants on what we need to do. And Catherine Brotherton, the city attorney, who knows everything there is to know about the code. And what needs to change, or what already exists in code could probably get you those answers. But there's a strong desire to try to do something like that citywide.
Cool. I think it would definitely work in the Whitaker, especially right on Blair, in front of Meiji, in front of Slice. I think that
and Grit.
Yeah, I think that would be kind of a cool night out. Maybe the Whitaker.
I will tell you that those street closures come to me, or at least my office, for approval, just based on safety things. And I would tell you that I would not have any problem approving that on a case-by-case basis to allow for that to occur.
Cool.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So do you still have your 2 Conestogas that are available if we can find a spot in the Whitaker? Now I'm putting you on on the spot.
I don't know, because I didn't ask Julie Smith. She would know what our Conestoga inventory looks like. But I do know that community supportive shelters, I think Ian was talking about CSS having maybe the ability to get a hold of those at cost. I do know the city is looking at wanting to throw some money at Conestogas. I think if WCC went to the city and said, hey, you know those 32 people that you have at designated temporary shelter sites, we'll host 6 of them if you can pull this together. I think the city would jump at an opportunity to move those folks along. While I'm having a conversation with you, I was texting a local property owner and business owner who has a piece of property not far from you guys down off of 2nd and Garfield, who's also interested in hosting some Conestogas on his property as well.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
And the county has some property there, because Brad and I looked into that 2 years ago. They have some sheds that store nothing that might be available if there was some push from some people that were way up there.
That's an interesting notion as to whether or not, when the county decides they're going to shut down the fairgrounds, whether or not they have entertained the idea of opening any of their other property, even some of their rural property, to be able to host camping. And I don't know the answer to that.
That would be awesome. Jennifer, did you have a question?
Yes. I was wondering what was the most concerning emails that you read from the city, I guess, overall, or if you can be specific from Whittier.
Yeah, I think the some of the ones that were the most concerning centered around significant drug use, needles being found in the parks, and in some cases thrown over the fence into people's yard. We had one individual, for instance, who had a discussion with a camper that was on their planting strip, and the camper didn't like the interaction and decided to throw his entire bucket of feces over the residence fence and into her front yard. Criminal behavior, we were getting many emails from the increase in criminal behavior up amongst the businesses up on 99 and 5th, which is where, and then ultimately the Coastal Farm was a victim of a theft of $6,000 worth of inventory, which we found in the homeless camp up there at 99 and 5th. We had on 13th Street, we had a couple of explosions that occurred and tents catching on fire from people that were having fires and using propane inappropriately. So, I mean, there's a lot of that stuff's going on. The huge increase in calls for service in a couple of these areas, and the spike in what we call car clouts, which is unauthorized entry into motor vehicles. So people breaking into cars for loose change and anything they could find. Some of the camps are in and around some of those camps. We had a huge spike in those crimes and calls for service. So, and then sanitation is a huge one. We had some pictures come in and some calls and emails coming in around a fairly large encampment that was on Amazon Creek over by Westmoreland, 18th and Chambers. And they were just dumping all of their trash and using Amazon Creek as a bathroom. And so from an environmental perspective, it was just destroying that portion of Amazon Creek. So those are the kind of things that I hear about on a daily basis.
Vincent, did you have a question?
Central city concern.
Go ahead one more time. I'm sorry. You're muted.
Yeah, whenever I lived in Portland, we had a social service called Central City Concern that created permanent housing for a lot of folks that are in situations like that. It doesn't seem like we have any type of service for that here. Is that something that we could create, like a campaign for a grant or something to try to create more of a permanent housing solution for what seems to be, kind of our number one ongoing problem?
Yeah, I don't know who would be able to answer that question.
Yeah, yeah, that's probably above my pay grade and probably not one that I can speak to. Housing and rent assistance, I know is something that exists, but I think that is happening more at the county level than it is at the city level. But I don't want to misspeak. I'm just not going to have a ton of information about that.
Cheryl was saying something about that earlier too. I think that is where the dollars lie.
Yeah, and just recently, I think the county got $529,000 for COVID-19, but it was to keep folks in their housing. And I mean, it's part of the implementation of the TAC, but I have to get on my soapbox for, the permanent supportive housing elements are using a centralized wait list. And one of the primary criteria is that the individuals come from the FUSE list, which are the frequent users of the system. So earlier we were talking about some of the folks that are most problematic. They're high on the list for getting placed in those available units. And that's concerning to me. I mean, that's a policy decision, but I'm thinking of folks with disabilities and others that I would want to have higher on the list. But that's purely, I assume, a financial decision to get those problem individuals, in theory, out of the criminal justice system and out of the hospitals. But when we think about how we're going to allocate limited resources, who are we rewarding versus who are we don't have an unlimited supply here of resources.
No, and I think the chief said something earlier that stuck with me is, we've been offering a handout. Let's offer a hand up. What we're trying to do is further these people in our communities, and giving them a hand up is going to guarantee that we are providing for someone. We know this person, not just for a general group of people or who happen to, tent out in our neighborhood. I think it's very important, same as you, Cheryl, you're not going to incentivize bad behavior. We are trying to reward people that want to do better in their lives. But it is about 8:30. We do have a meeting with you tomorrow, Chief Skinner, Thea, is that correct? We can talk more about all of this.
Chief Skinner, I do have one last question for you.
I'm sorry.
On the fires, the illegal fires that we're seeing, and in some of our tent camping, and like by Territorial Winery, there's been an encampment there that's just out of control. And when we call that in as a neighborhood, do we call the non-emergency number, or do we call the 911 number to say that we've got someone doing a fire? What's the better route with that?
At this point, I don't care which one you call as long as you call. Now, having said that, we may not be able to get there in a timely manner, but at least we get that as a tick mark to help us know where the problems are. Quite honestly, the majority of the movement that we've had in some of these camps have been as a result, and don't give away my secret, but has been a result of people that are emailing me directly and saying, I need you to do something about this. And so I'm putting it on the radar screen, like with Doug Mozan, Carolyn Mason, to be looking at those. And so right now, I'll tell you on my radar screen is 5th and Almaden is getting posted and cleaned up. It's a mess over there. 13th Street, we got moved inside the fence for the time being, so that was another one. Westmoreland Park, I'm looking at, and that particular area around the Amazon Creek. The underpass at River Road was getting bad, and we're taking a look at that. So, Thea, if you have a couple that you need us to take a look at, now again, we're going to take a look at it through the lens of cleanliness and sanitation, and we're going to look at it through the lens of safety.
So we have prostitution in a drug ring on Polk Street and Maury Jacobs Park at the toilet. So it's not a camp, but they're using the bathroom. Brad can speak more to it, but.
Yeah, no, that doesn't shock me. And again, those are the types of operations we want to engage in. And so I'm stressing street crimes pretty hard with doing these all over the city, trying to get to them when they can. We're going to be doing some different things downtown coming up here pretty soon too. We're going to try and change some behavior downtown. So it's one of those things that we would just put on a list and try and prioritize and eventually get to it. But that team of 10 officers, 8 officers and 2 sergeants, are specifically trained to deal with these types of things and conduct these investigations.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. I really do appreciate your time and for putting up with some of our questions.
No, of course.
I think it is quite a bit more benign than maybe our past meetings, but I really do like these Zoom meetings. These are working really well with our community.
Yeah, if having Zoom meetings mean I get less beat up, then I'm happy to join you virtually anytime.
I know, it works out pretty good for you. No, Chief Skinner, thank you very much. I really do appreciate it.
You bet,
yeah,
guys.
we appreciate the job you're doing, and especially giving the Whitaker the attention it needs. It's a great neighborhood. We just need a little help every once in a while.
Well, I'll tell you, you guys have done a great job of kind of creating a relationship with your police department and specifically with your chief. It's been a while since Thea has demanded for me to pick her up and drive her around the neighborhood and point out everything that's wrong with this world. And so as much as it's hard to see the pain that you're going through, building those relationships does benefit when it comes to trying to get some things done. It's all about those relationships. So let's keep that up.
It's only because I've been in lockdown, Chief.
Yeah, we'll bring out the big guns later when Thea's ready. But thank you very much, Chief Skinner.
All righty. See you guys.
All right. Good evening.
Bye-bye.
Cheryl, thank you so much.
Yeah, that was great, Cheryl.
Do you think that maybe you can think of some ways that we could work together and we could email and?
Absolutely, be happy to.
Cool.
So just let me know.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Cheryl. I guess we'll be, oh, Stephen, I'm sorry. Go ahead, bud.
I wanted to ask Cheryl a question. We have been told that the air conditioning system at the mission has a UV system to sanitize the air going through the conditioners. We've been quoting that fact to others, and I just wanted to make sure it's correct.
That is correct. At first, I thought it was like science fiction when I heard about it, but yes, we have UV lights that is part of our sanitation. It was installed originally to address things like tuberculosis, etc., but it's been running full time since beginning of, well, the end of February, basically. So yes, it's an important sanitation piece.
Cool.
I just wanted to point out that I work with public health, and it's my job to check those lights twice every year.
Oh, great.
All right. So we have an insight on that. Yeah. So thank you very much. And Cheryl, so I guess we'll be speaking with you tomorrow if you're able to join on the Zoom.
Yeah, anytime. And
okay,
please feel free. If anyone has questions or wants to reach out to me, I'm more than happy. I mean, we're part of this community, and I want to try to help. I mean, I'm just so impressed with you all doing something. So thank you. Thank you.
Cheryl, could you put your email in the chat for anybody that wants to write it down? Do you know how to do that? Yeah.
I will try to make it group. Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much. All right. Well, we do have a few things left on our agenda. And I think the first one, Ian, are you okay with going with the Dubcat portion first? Okay.
Cheryl, I just wanted to say thank you as well again. And if you'd like, you're more than welcome to stay. I'm sure that you're exhausted from a full day of work, and just wanted to say thank you too for. I've heard that you've been sheltering at the mission. Actually, I know it's not something that you brought up tonight, but I really appreciate the perspective that you must have gained from living amongst your guests, and I'm excited to learn with you, not just from your experience of having the Conestogas, but just the experience you've had learning with the mission and learning with your guests. I think that there's a lot of us, a lot for me and a lot for us to learn about your experience too. But we do a lot as a 501c3, and we have a public art committee that we're going to talk about in a little bit. So just would invite you to stay for the rest of the meeting if you'd like.
No, I'd be happy to. Absolutely.
Great. So I wanted to share three things. So we have an update on the free wall project, and Travis is going to bring a motion for a vote by the board tonight. We have an invitation by City of Eugene Cultural Services to join in a reflections project and the Sunday Slow Roll. And so I'll start with the Sunday Slow Roll program. On Sunday, May the 31st, Eugene Cultural Services is going to be coming from downtown to Jefferson West Side and the Whitaker neighborhood. The Sunday Slow Roll program is funded by City of Eugene Cultural Services, in which a mobile DJ booth goes throughout the neighborhoods around the city of Eugene to be able to reduce some of the social isolation from COVID-19. And so they've asked the WCC to provide both a proposed route as well as proposed stops through the Whitaker neighborhood. So if anyone wants to be able to provide either a route or proposed stops, please reach out to Chris or myself or post on the Whitaker Community Council Facebook page, because I'm going to be sending the proposed stops to the team at Eugene Cultural Services tomorrow before noon. That's when they've asked us to reach out. It's been a wildly popular program. They've done it once so far in the Amazon neighborhood, and there's a whole fleet of bikers that have followed people dancing in their front yard. So it's just been something wonderful to see people not feeling socially isolated, even though they're socially distancing. So if you have any ideas, please, again, reach out to Chris or myself, and I'll make sure to send it to the team at the city. Something that
does it go by, Ian?
I beg your pardon?
What time of day, or does it go by?
It goes by in the afternoon.
Okay.
And so really quickly, I wanted to share something that we're going to bring for a vote later today by the board. Can everyone see, it says WCAT proposal for reflections?
Yep.
Great. So instead of reading through the proposal, what I'll do instead is talk about the experience. So City of Eugene Cultural Services came to the Whitaker Community Art Team Subcommittee because they were interested in engaging arts organizations throughout the city to see if there was any interest in being funded to produce small projects in neighborhoods of Eugene to be able to allow an opportunity for persons in the community to reflect. And really it's an opportunity for folks to be able to reflect upon their experience of social isolation, of loss of income, of loss of stability and pace of life. And the Whitaker Community Art Team has come up with 2 projects that we want to bring forward to cultural services with the blessings of the board. And what I wanted to do tonight is kind of briefly describe both of them. So again, take into consideration that the theme is reflections. And so both of these projects are intended to be able to provide an opportunity for persons to socially distance and reflect upon their experience. So the first is that the Whitaker Community Art Team would build a single small photo booth large enough for only 1 occupant. And the booth would be have some aspects of privacy and with very few signs prompting for what people to do, but give them a chance to basically kind of show themselves visually in almost like a confession style of what their fashion is. And this could include masks, comfortable clothes, people wearing their wedding dresses for fun. And this kind of gives you a sense of what this was visually inspired by. Micheline Thomas, who's a visual artist, who you can see highlighted in these 2 photos, is one of the inspirations for one of our member artists, Josh Sands, to be able to kind of inspire the piece itself. And so we're putting this proposal forward to be able to create some sort of shareable space where people can kind of show visually how they're reflecting upon their time rather than any other way, and then share that both to social media with a specific hashtag, similar to the ones we're promoting through our flyers and billboards. And the second proposal is one that we're calling a call for our future. So with this proposal, what we're asking the city to support is for us to create a photo booth, or excuse me, photo booth. No, excuse me, a phone booth. And so it would be read in the similar way that kind of these phone booths in the UK are. And I'm sure Stephen can attest that these things actually exist.
TARDIS.
There you go. And it's inspired by a couple of different projects. This one, a phone booth for Japanese mourners. After the tsunami, a small village in Japan in 2011 created a phone booth with a rotary phone where people could speak to loved ones who had been lost. And so with this project, rather than visually, we want to record with audio people's aspirations for the future. So instead of reflecting on their grief, what we want to be able to do is propose a project that people can speak to themselves 2 years down the road. And that was partially inspired by a film project piece of art done in Italy called 10 Days. And so this recorded people, we're looking at this gentleman here, Salvatore, who said, "I am you in 10 days." And these messages were for themselves from 10 days in the past. And this gentleman saying, if you go outside, only do it to be indispensable. These issues are more serious than the world believes. It's just a flu. It's maybe not that bad. You don't know. But then again, these people in almost quirky ways said, you'll live for moments of unity that you could have never imagined and relax because it will end soon. This gentleman here with a baby says, don't fuck it up. And what we want to do with the Calls from the Future project is be able to, instead of having a phone here, have a phone number so that when people enter the phone booth, they'll be able to call the phone number and have their numbers recorded through a Google Voice line. Will then in turn record those conversations with people's permissions. And then at a time when a vaccine's developed, allow people in an interactive way to be able to listen to these messages from the past about their hope for what the future brings. So through these 2 projects, one visually and one through audio, we want to be able to allow people to reflect in a deeper way about what it means to live through the pandemic. And both of these projects would exist in the Whitaker as well as in other neighborhoods. And the reason that the city of Eugene looked to the Whitaker Community Art Team is, as opposed to other arts organizations in the city, we're location based, and we have a deeper sense of what it means to be in a neighborhood and to be able to interact with our neighbors and interact with place. So we're gonna bring something for a vote by the board in a little bit. And the last is the free wall project. And I know that Travis is going to talk about this later on tonight, but we received all of the signatures from neighbors to be able to move forward with that. So we've been waiting a long time now to be able to get our final approval on the free wall, which is a freestanding mural project to allow visiting artists as well as community members to use wheat paste, to use pens, to use watercolors, acrylics, spray paint, to be able to create unsanctioned art. So it's the city allowing us to be able to build this wall, and the neighbors of Washington right next to the Whitaker Community Gardens have signed on to the project. So they've given their approval, and now we're ready to move forward with a contract with a concrete contractor, which we had approved by the board in January. This was just the last piece of the project that we needed to move things along. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about either of those three updates: the slow roll program, the free wall, or the reflections project. But Travis and I would be happy to answer them if y'all had any questions.
Just on your reflections one, because of COVID, how do you plan on keeping it sanitary?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I can speak to the phone booth project, the Calls from a Future. And so we're intending that to be both a project where people walk in, so there's no door, and they can call the phone number. Also, people who are socially distancing or immunocompromised and can't leave the house, they can still call the phone number. So that's my solution for that one. I'm the lead on that one. I'm not the lead on the photo booth project, so I can't speak to that specifically.
I do have a question. That was my concern, the distancing and the concern about the COVID in that booth and the cleanliness. This is one of the reasons I don't participate in a lot of the committee meetings or other meetings. The Zoom makes it doable, and I really appreciate it. I think the ideas are good, but you did mention that you could phone in from your own home, or did I misunderstand that?
No, it's exactly right. Yeah. So the phone booth is meant because we want people to kind of intuitively know, like, oh, a phone booth, that's for making phone calls. I've seen this in movies. But at the same time, we would post the Google Voice line so that people could call from home too, because we want this exhibit, the Reflections exhibit, to be something that's accessible to everyone, whether they're immunocompromised, they're taking care of someone who can't leave the home, or if that's just something that they prefer, if they feel safer that way.
And where would you locate them?
So we would locate them in the Whitaker initially. However, the exhibits would be mobile. And so the city hasn't decided yet how they're carving up the neighborhoods. But what we've heard initially is that it may be Bethel, it may be Whitaker, it may be downtown, and it may be Jefferson Westside that are part of the same cohort of neighborhoods for the Reflections exhibit. So hopefully what we do is we would pair the Whitaker Art Walk, which is our monthly art walk that we do through the Whitaker Community Art Team Subcommittee, and we would be moving that virtually online, doing studio tours, doing workshops with artists, as well as doing a physical component of temporary art installations around the Whitaker. So hopefully we would have one or both exhibits in the Whitaker for that week or that month, and then we would move them to different parts of the city of Eugene for a temporary installation. They would almost like live in a certain neighborhood for either a certain week or a certain month, and then we would move them to different neighborhoods in line with kind of what the city's doing kind of more broadly with these series of exhibits.
So then no one could make it their home, in the sense of, people in the street. That would be my concern as well.
Sure. I mean, Chris, you're muted. I don't know if you have a comment, but yeah, I mean, folks are living in porta potties right now. If people need a place to stay, they're gonna stay somewhere. So we couldn't stop folks from living in the phone booth or the photo booth, but certainly they're not intentioned to function.
And the duration of the project is pretty small too.
Right.
10 days,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
So it's only a few months. Yep.
So, Stephen, did you have something? I'm sorry, I thought I saw your hand earlier.
No, I was just trying to stop my camera zooming in and out.
I love your dynamic camera. It is so interesting.
It's an external Logitech camera because my
Gotcha. Ian, I don't know. Did anyone else have any questions about these
I
projects?
just have a comment. Just FYI, there's a phone booth that is just like the one in the picture. It
Oh, heck. Shop, isn't it?
No, it's at the brewery
Steelhead.
down on Pearl, Steelhead, right. It's right inside the inside. And there's an actual phone in it, I think.
I have a phone booth, but I'm keeping it. Oh, no, I think that's awesome. I think these projects are cool. I mean, you know, yes, we do have the cleanliness aspect that needs to be taken care of, but you know, we also need to remember art makes us happy. I mean, it really does. It takes our mind off things. And I like the reflections. I like, yeah. It'll be nice to have some music again. So along with that, what more do we have to do in regards to any of those, Ian?
So I have 2 more updates, and then Travis and I have 3 motions for the board to consider tonight. Travis has one for the free wall. I have one for the Reflections project to receive board approval to move forward with it formally and do a letter of support, and then one on the definitions for sanitary housing. But before that, I just wanted to say that I met with Kaz Casado, the Transportation Program Coordinator for the Public Works Department for the City of Eugene, and she talked about the city's efforts for slow streets, kind of what the chief was talking about earlier. So I think that she'd be a good ally if the board wants to move forward with a slow street on Blair. And kind of closing down the street for a little while. And I can share more of that next week. But I think we might have some allies in City Hall if Whitaker wanted to be the first neighborhood that kind of slowed a street. That's what the city's calling it instead of closing a street down. But basically what they're looking to do is starting temporarily looking as a way to increase economic activity. But kind of longer term, maybe there's whole corridors that can be permanently closed to cars as a way to reduce traffic fatalities, as a way to increase public safety during COVID, and as a way to be able to increase more biking and mobility beyond cars. And then right before this meeting, as the NLC co-chair, I provided some testimony to the budget committee. And so they were doing their public comment period tonight at 5:30, and they we're hearing members of the community. So we had myself, as well as Stan Dura, who's the co-chair of the Laurel Hill Valley Citizens, which is another neighborhood association, as well as Lynn, whose last name I forget, who's chair of the Active Bethel Citizens, provide testimony about the value of neighborhood associations responding to COVID and the role that we can play during recovery. So we asked for 3 things, one being maintaining funding levels in FY21 in the same way as FY20, 2 being that 50% of all neighborhood matching grants, community and neighborhood matching grants, would be provisioned for COVID recovery efforts. And then 3 is that the $520,000 that City Manager Pro Tem Sarah Maderi set aside for COVID-19 recovery could be used by neighborhood associations. Because we think that those monies can be used for sanitary housing. So those are kind of like the last 2 updates that I had. And I don't know if Travis, I can share the screen for the free wall piece if you wanted to talk about the
MOU. Okay.
Hi, Travis. So good to hear from you. Hello.
Hello. You guys can hear me, right?
Yes, sir.
Should I just read this, or you mean you guys can read it, right?
Yeah, we can see.
So basically making a motion for a vote on proceeding to work with or to come up with an MOU so that open spaces and us can complete the free wall project as far as is it the concrete work or no?
Yep, that's the concrete work.
Yeah, so we have to come up with the contracted, and we already have that, or we're working on that, and then we just need to work with the city. Sorry, I was so ready like an hour ago.
No worries, man. No, Travis is totally right. We got the approval on the 15th of January to do the MOU with Cultural Services, but we never got an approval from the board to do one with Parks and Open Spaces. So Kate Van, what's her name, Travis? Kate Van Der?
Kate Van Holt.
Van Holt, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's our contact at Parks and Open Spaces. She's just she lives here in the Whitaker, huge advocate of the
President,
project.
yeah.
Yep. But we wanted to get approval from the board before we draft the MOU, and then we would get the signature of the chair, the treasurer, and the secretary in order to do the MOU forward. And they're asking for the same stuff as Cultural Services, that we would, include their name on any locations, that we would be the ones paying for it, stuff like that.
Anyone?
So I'd like to make a motion for us to proceed on this.
I'll second it. All in favor?
How many is there?
There is.
Can you see us? Because
I
I can see the motion screen.
Yeah.
There we go.
It's unanimous.
How many people?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 on board, and then
And there was
else off board.
much rejoicing.
Much rejoicing.
And there
yes.
was much rejoicing. Yes, that's right.
Well, good. Yeah, that's a lot of hard
Also-
work you guys put into it. So thank you very much.
I also have a question. Are we supposed to sign in on the chat for the sign in for the board members?
No, it's recording.
It's recording.
Oh, okay, cool.
I know, it makes it so much easier now. Okay, so was there one more proposal you have, Ian?
Yeah, and Ian has to-
There's two, but I think one of them we might need to save for next week, just because it's the definitions of sanitary housing. So that seems like a much longer conversation. But
Okay.
I'll
Maybe
share
we can chat about it
Yeah,
tomorrow
totally.
too.
Totally. So I wanted to bring a motion forward for WCAT to participate, and WCAT's just shorthand for the Whitaker Community Art Team Subcommittee, partnering with the City of Eugene Cultural Services Division for the Reflection Space project. In accordance with previous board requests, we're coming to the board to request permission to partner with the City of Eugene on this project, as well as have a letter of support from the board chair, which we can draft if the board gives support in us engaging with the city on this project. That doesn't mean we'll get the money to do it. It just means that
We're gonna try.
Yeah, that we're gonna try.
Cool. Travis, you want to make a motion?
Oh, well, I'd like to make a motion to, well, he did too.
I
To
second.
vote on this.
Yeah. All in favor?
Sure. Yeah.
Any nays? None. Cool. All right. Yeah, those are going to be fun. Hopefully it'll work.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
This is my first time on here, and I do appreciate it. Is there a way to email questions that we may have so that you can address them if we can't Zoom or go to the meetings?
Yeah, you're more than welcome to go to the website for the community council and you could address them there, or you could go to the Facebook page
Yeah, she knows where
of the community council is.
Where
And
she sent a message to.
okay. Okay, Annika was just saying you have sent a message in there. So yeah, those are great places, and we will definitely bring them up at our meetings when we have questions that come through there.
Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Well, it's 8:59.
Can I say something before we go?
Of course.
So I just wanted to say that I thought that you guys did a great job on the sanitary housing, and it was a great presentation, and it clearly a lot of work went into that and a lot of thought, and good job.
Now we just need some money.
Well, it looks like there's money there. It's just,
It always looks like there's money there until you want it. That's the thing. But I don't know. I think it is a great job, and I think it's not done yet. We still have a lot of work to do, because the other thing we have to remember about housing people is people have a longevity of life. They're going to live there. We're going to have, I mean, this is something that once we start, I don't think it's ever going to stop. I really don't. And I think that our compassion is going to have to be overflowing, because this is a big undertaking. These are people's lives that they're entrusting in us. They need a hand up. So let's be that hand. Unless anyone has anything else, it's 9 o'clock. Thank you so much for your time. And we'll see you next week at 7 o'clock. And some of my friends will see you tomorrow.
Margaret, I sent you a little private chat question.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you. You rock.
That's great. Thank you.
Bye.
Cheryl, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cheryl.
Is there something else that goes on after this?
No,
you just
we're
have,
just
you
kidding.
just have to hit leave, Jennifer, and that's how you get out of the meeting.
I'm
In the
just
lower
curious
right-hand corner.
about- I'm just curious about the silence. I think that Zoom is working well, and I hope that a lot of people use that to communicate.
Oh, yeah. It has
All
worked out good. Well, thank you for coming.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you, Margaret.
Chris, don't shut me down because Margaret and I are chatting.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Okay, Margaret, now we can talk.
Hi, everybody.
So I do know the supervisor, and she wouldn't want to know what happened. I had an issue similar to that happened one time, and they went back and listened to the calls. They use them as opportunities to train their people.
Right, and I talked to Margaret a little bit on Zoom that night, and then I called her the next day. She gave me her number, and we talked about it a little bit. She wanted to bring a dispatcher to a meeting to talk to us a little bit about things that you can say, keywords that maybe will get them to act quicker rather than having 10 neighbors call over the course of 5 hours. And she had said the same thing. She asked me when it was and said that sometimes that they go back and listen to the calls, and the fact that a dispatcher hung up on me, that she said that they had several new dispatchers, and that's probably was the situation, and that her supervisor would want to know about it and that they would train from that.
Yeah.
Basically.
So if you want connection, if Margaret didn't get you in connection, if you want connection, I can connect you with Cindy. Cindy came a few years ago and talked at a Whitaker Community Council meeting, she and her supervisor, about keywords we should use. And that's why I kind of asked the chief tonight, well, what should we say which number should we call?
Right, I appreciate that, or how we get faster response.
Right, and so I took your question from the post and sent it to him earlier, because that has been an issue. And I do know that if you feel threatened for your safety, that is a word to use.
Okay.
So
well, I mean, I was on the phone. The lady was threatening me in my face when I was on the phone with the 911 dispatcher.
Yeah, and so they would want to know that.
So, but yeah, I did. Yeah. That's not really my style.
So if you want me to connect you together, we can.
Well, let's see if Margaret brings a dispatcher to a meeting.
Okay.
Do we
and
know
if you want, I can get a dispatcher for the next meeting. As you can tell, I have some connections with EPD.
Yes, just a little bit.
Hey, and just in case you guys noticed, like from a perspective of us being here for such a long time, I think we have come a long way in kind of like our interpretation of what we expect from the police. You know, we can't just expect them to come to us whenever we need them. We got to give back a little bit too. And I think that, and I hate to say it like this, but I am, it's just like the fucking mob. You show them some respect, they give you some respect. I'm not a bootlicker, and I'm not sitting here trying to, you know, say, let's.
I don't have any problem with, I have lots of respect for the police.
You know,
I
and
don't,
too. But and
I don't have any issue with that.
But our neighborhood has, you know what I'm saying? And
They do.
And I think that part of like the new way that we're approaching this is because of us.
Well, that's why I applied for that committee, that citizens committee, to be a liaison between the, and they got back to me. COVID happened. It was kind of a mess, you know, but I don't think they picked me. But
well,
that's
that's
okay.
good.
I applied. I told Margaret that I did, and she said she would look into it.
That's
So-
awesome.
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
Margaret's
Well,
been a really good resource too. She's been awesome.
Margaret, just so you know, so a couple years ago, when I was on the board a couple years ago, I also sat in on the interviewing committee for our new chief. And then I went to his swearing in or whatever to the thing. And then we started bringing him to our meetings, and we encouraged him to bring his wife, and I met his wife, and his wife said that that he had to take care of me. So that's how that relationship. And
that's good.
Because I ended up kind of entertaining their daughter, his 10-year-old daughter,
right,
at one of the New Day bakeries, where he came to the New Day bakery and mixed and mingled. So we've been trying to change the relationship, and I do call him when we have hot spots, or if I hear people getting really upset with EPD, I'm like, look, we've had this incident, we're not getting responses. What are you going to do about it? And that's what I do to him. So,
Well,
or I
that's
drive
great.
him around the neighborhood and say, look at this, look at this, look at this. So,
Yeah,
so
we
that's
need to-
kind of how that relationship started.
We need to target that area that we were talking about down by Territorial, because it does
Yeah, so
meet the
tomorrow I will
criteria of
address that.
safety, health, and environmental degradation. I mean, it's really bad, you know. And I called it.
It's trickling down the street.
Is
Just
it
so
really?
I live on Monroe, in
Yeah,
Fourth
right down
Valley
there.
in Monroe, and it is trickling down the street again.
So-
I'm afraid they're just going to open up that fairgrounds and just throw those people out.
You know they're
They
going to
are.
do that. You know they are, and
That's what they're going to do.
I know, and it's going to suck because see, here's the other thing: is it going to be a time where we try to champion the cause, you know, and we like, or
There's
is it
only so much that we could do.
It's true, or is it jackasses like fucking Eric Jackson, who's going to be down there getting all of this press? I mean, I would rather have positive press for the city, for the county, for the police, instead of.
They would rather have it as well.
Then they're going to have to cough up some money and find a place for these folks. You know, they really are.
I thought that Cheryl from, I have actually dealt with, she doesn't remember me, but that's okay. We did some fundraisers at my work for the mission. But what she said is that they're changing what I heard is they're changing the whole scope of what the mission stands for. They offered people stability and security, and oh my gosh, all of a sudden they're taking a little pride in themselves.
Yeah.
You know, that we should learn. I already knew that. And the fact that it took something like this for people to learn that, to me, is an amazing thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's common sense stuff.
Well, we don't want them going back to housing more people than they can, you know.
No,
And we
no,
don't
but
want
I
them
think
to
what
eat
she
the
said
people
was
3 times a
great.
day.
They're
Me too.
interacting, they're taking responsibility, they're feeling better, they're, you know.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to go back to feeding more people than she doesn't want to bring them back into the neighborhood.
No, and we
No,
want
that's
to
what I
support
heard.
her with that. And that's, you know, just like the chief was saying too, is, you know, whenever they do things like break up a camp, they do have people that claim police brutality, you know, these things are illegal. Like I saw that camp over by the coastal place. I didn't know they had broken in there and stolen over $6,000 worth of shit, you know, but did I think that camp was fucked? Hell yeah. There was people camping right next to each other, flipped over bikes. I mean, it was gross.
They all moved under the Jefferson Bridge
I know.
there at the park.
Well, and see,
Flipped
that's
over
what's gonna happen
bikes,
too.
piles of garbage. I mean,
know.
it's 2 blocks from my house.
Yeah,
And they are.
yeah.
They're stripping bikes, everything.
So
And
they're gonna have
that's
to
going to
support
get broken up next week. Because he said that they were going to start on the parks next week.
So.
And then they're going to be back on the corner.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then they're going to be back on the corner.
They're going to be in front of my house rather than 2 blocks away.
And that's why we have to support them. And we have to ask a lot from them too. I mean, supporting people through this crisis has been very difficult because we want to do the right thing. But when this crisis is dissipating like it is now, we still need to support the people that need the help. You know, there's people that need this help, but that 10% that fuck everything up, fucking get those people out of the neighborhood.
Those are the ones that are out there right now. The ones that are in the shelters, the ones that are at the mission, the ones that are in the Conestoga huts. Those are the ones that want to be helped.
Want the help. And that's
the other
who we need
ones are
first.
like, fuck you. I don't want any help. I don't want any stability. I just want to go do what I want to do.
Yeah, I want to steal your bike. I want to
Correct.
do some meth. I want to threaten people. I want to get free food. See, you know, I started to think about that too. When, like Cheryl was saying about incentivizing and throwing resources down the tube, in a way, when you have a population who receives SNAP benefits, who gets 3 meals a day at the mission or in other places, are they really needing that level of service? You know, if they're provided some form of money for food, why do we have to feed them again?
That's a good question.
You know, because like I know damn well people sell their cards. I know they fucking buy water, you know, pop it and return it. I don't want to be like heavy-handed about that shit, but if you're getting, you know, food stamps and you don't have any dependents, there's no kids involved, why the fuck are you allowed to go in and get free food? You can afford your food. You know, I mean, these are all the things that the tough questions that we're going to be asking. And unfortunately, I think the Republicans are going to do it for us by cutting food benefits at some point, you know, but like the mission, there's no reason she has to continue to support that population that just shits all over them and the neighborhood. You know, we don't need that anymore. And
No,
we cannot go back.
I agree with that.
Because right now, like you're saying, right now we're already at that point. And if we have 132 people that filter through here, I mean, they're going to be living in the parks. Have you looked at the parks? You know, others, they look like a homeless camp. You know, I mean, they're fucked. Like I put a message out on the thing and I got so many things about, oh, I love the sight of tents and and it's like, oh my God.
I saw you put the message on there.
Yeah,
And
I'm not talking about that shit. I mean, you know, I want people to be safe in this community, but
you know what I think? I think we should go clean it all up. I'm tired of the crap. I'm tired of the chop shops. I'm tired of the needles in the street. I'm tired of somebody looking at me saying, fuck you, I don't want to do nothing.
Oh, I know.
And going and eating 3 free meals a day and getting food stamps.
Yes.
And choosing to sleep in a tent and stick a needle in their arm. I'm tired.
And not work or not do anything.
I love the neighborhood and I understand the homeless people that need the help. We don't see them.
No.
They are not the ones that are causing the problem on the corner.
But that's who we should seek out for housing. You know, like having those people that are previously vetted out. You know, I mean, I can't think of anyone in the neighborhood that I've personally vetted. I would rather go through somebody that's already done this and given these people some resources. You know, so
well, they, like he said, they have 35 people.
Let's
out of
start with
all the
somebody.
people,
Yeah,
out of
let's start
all the
with
people
somebody.
they have housed, only 35 people do they think are really have taken some steps to move themselves forward.
Dude, our fucking level of humanity is just sinking lower and lower.
We need to check with Hop Valley. We need to check with the Wine Lab and Oakshire.
Has anyone talked to Ninkasi?
together and Ninkasi,
They have so much property.
so much property, and see if they can do a couple of Conestogas.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna be good because we can use it as a publicity stunt, quote unquote, for them. You know, because a lot of these businesses have been hit pretty hard. You know, and it would be good to be able to give them that publicity of what they're trying to do post-COVID.
And I actually think Red Barn might be willing to do one. They're not Red
Maybe.
Barn, Red Apple.
I think that they may do one.
Maybe. I don't know if it
because
would
they-
be there, you know.
They kept the porta potty. They were the first one to put a porta potty in, and they were the last one to take it out.
And it was the shittiest fucking, I mean, it got burnt down one night. Motherfuckers burnt that goddamn thing down.
So
I mean, they were, oh, so, yeah, those guys are really good about
you're
that.
still recording, Chris.
Oh, whoops.
So